You may think the media are capable only of skepticism and loathing, but think again. Journalists can love, too. Their latest crush? The Democratic People's Republic of North Korea. Kim Yo-jong, whose brother is, of course, the undisputed dictator of that Stalinist hermit kingdom, is at the Winter Olympics this week. And according to the press, she's a huge star, a bigger star even than our vice president, Mike Pence, or for that matter, a bigger star than any of the actual athletes. Don't believe it? Consider some of these descriptions. From the Washington Post, quote, the Ivanka Trump of North Korea captivates. From CNN, she's stealing the show. The New York Times says she turns on the charm. Reuters, the newswire, meanwhile, writes this, quote, North Korea has emerged as the early favorite to grab one of the Winter Olympics' most important medals, the diplomatic gold. Ugh. Well, reporters gushed over the world's last totalitarian state. Mike Pence, who again is the vice president of the United States, was attacked for not standing up to honor North Korean athletes. Watch this.
I thought that Mike Pence said that it was inappropriate to make political statements at sporting events.
If you're in Korea, you need to stand up. You need to stand up and show respect. The Olympics are supposed to be the one place where politics is not supposed to play a part. That's my understanding.
Well, if you're surprised, you shouldn't be. Progressives have a long and dishonorable history of supporting the world's most repressive regimes. No exaggeration. The New York Times, just to name one example, supported Joseph Stalin even as he was murdering up to 12 million Ukrainians in the famous famine there. That paper also led the cheering for Fidel Castro as he turned Cuba into a police state. In 1975, and we're not making this up, when the Khmer Rouge swept to power in Cambodia, the Khmer Rouge, the New York Times made this prediction in a headline, quote, for most, a better life. One of the worst genocides in history followed shortly thereafter. It turned out not to be true. Well, it's hard to find a dictator the left has not supported. Chairman Mao, Hugo Chavez, Idi Amin. These people seem to have nothing in common but one thing. They all hate America. Turns out progressive activists also have one thing in common. They resent their fathers. That's where their politics come from. The rest is just window dressing.
The Olympics were happening over the weekend. And you would think, well, this would be a good time to point out that they're happening in South Korea, the Winter Olympics. It would be a good time to point out that South Korea is a wonderful place, and North Korea is, to borrow some language from President Trump, a bleep hole. It is not a nice country. It is the worst country maybe on the face of the earth. Between the years 1994 and 1997, somewhere between 350,000 and 3.4 million North Koreans died of starvation. It was about 2 decades ago in mass starvation. Okay, they still have mass gulags. They still, in the 1980s, had concentration camps where they would legitimately torture or murder people. They still do in some places of the country. If you do not do what the regime wants you to do, they will kill you. They killed, the regime, Kim Jong-un, recently killed his, was brother-in-law, I think, that he murdered, or his uncle. It was both, actually. His uncle he killed by tossing him to dogs, and his brother-in-law, I believe, he murdered in a VX attack. He actually used a weapon of mass destruction in a public place. He sent an assassin to basically put a handkerchief filled with a deadly spore over the guy's face and killed him outright. Well, that would be an example of a bad country. What is not an example of a bad country is the United States. And if we're going to talk about people who are forwarding the aspirations of bad countries, you don't actually start with President Trump. So Jeff Flake, who's the senator from Arizona, has been very critical of the president of the United States because he says that President Trump has said ridiculous things about the press. I agree. He said that President Trump has made overtures to regimes like Vladimir Putin's, which has been true more in theory than in practice. Here's Jeff Flake going after Trump for giving support to dictators. Then I'm going to show you who actually gives support to dictators.
I think the president needs to stop calling Democrats or Republicans or others who don't stand or applaud at every line that he has, that they're un-American. He also used that term, or treasonous. Words matter. And when he talks about fake news, for example, I gave another speech where I talked about how that gives aid and comfort to authoritarians around the world who are now labeling their opposition or dismissing real dissent as fake news. So those things matter.
Okay, the reason that I'm showing this is because the media, this has been the media line, right? Chris Cuomo yesterday tweeted out that the media have been under assault from President Trump. And the reason people don't trust the media is because the media have been ripped apart by the president of the United States. This, of course, is the typical line, is that dictators all over the world are taking their cues from President Trump because President Trump is so unfriendly to the press. Okay, now let's talk about why people actually hate the press. The real reason people hate the press is because the press are a bunch of sycophants when it comes to some of the worst dictators on planet Earth. Not everyone in the press. Right? Jack Tapper at CNN notably has been ripping other members of the press for kissing up to the North Korean regime. But the sister of Kim Jong-un arrived in South Korea for the Olympics, and she was giving some pretty spectacular side eye to Mike Pence. And because Mike Pence is evil, as we all know from how he hates gay people apparently, Mike Pence has to be given side eye. If you don't give Mike Pence side eye, this means that you are a bad person. But if you do give Mike Pence side eye, you can go back home to a regime that routinely murders thousands of people, that shoots deserters, that attempts to take everyone who tries to make trade with the outside world and kills them, and the media will just kiss her rear. So here's CNN's headline. Kim Jong-un's sister is stealing the show at the Winter Olympics. Why? Because she's there, and she's smiling. Ooh, okay, here's another headline. This is all from mainstream media outlets. Let's do some more of these headlines. This is from the Wall Street Journal. The North Korean cheer squad's presence was impossible even for the skaters to ignore. Okay, we do actually, I believe, have some actual film of the tweet squad, do we not? So here's what the tweets of the cheer squad, rather. Here's what the cheer squad looked like from North Korea, and the media were just they were just over the moon about this. This was so glorious. Now, I want to point something out. We've just had 2 full years of the media explaining that Mike Pence and Donald Trump want to turn women in the United States into refugees from The Handmaid's Tale. In The Handmaid's Tale, women are forced to wear red uniforms, procreate at the whim of the dictatorship, and do everything the dictators tell them to do. Then there's the North Korean cheer squad, which wears red uniforms, gets pregnant and has abortions whenever the regime tells them to, is shot if they don't do exactly what they are supposed to do, and the media cheer them. Here's what it looked like in South Korea. Okay, so there you have it. And the media love the North Korean cheerleading squad. Sure, if they don't cheer properly, they get shot in the head back home, so that's excellent. But this is something the media have always loved. They love the idea of human beings as cogs in a vast machine. And I remember back during the 2010 Beijing Olympics? Was it 2010 when they did the Olympics in Beijing? I can't remember now. I believe it was. And when they did that Olympics, the opening ceremonies were thousands of people marching in unison and waving their arms in unison. And it truly was an amazing spectacle. And the media was just excited about it because whenever people just become little widgets to be manipulated by the state, the media has a really good time with it, particularly when they're Marxist dictatorships. They're not so big on non-Marxist juntas in South America, for example, where they force people to goose step, but they are very big on these sorts of displays. Oh my goodness, look at the coordination. Look at the magical coordination of all the people. Yeah, well, you know what? I'd clap in time, too, if they were threatening to shoot my family back home, if I didn't clap properly and smile properly for the cameras because of the yush, which is what they call the regime in North Korea. They have this philosophy of yush, which suggests that there's a cult of personality worship for the great leaders in North Korea. Here's some more headlines from the media celebrating all of this, of course. So we can go back to, we have the Wall Street Journal. This one is from Reuters, I believe. Amid Olympic détente, Pence snubs North Koreans and visits Pyeongchang. Oh, how dare Mike Pence snub the North Koreans? He's supposed to be nice to the lady. He didn't stand for the North Korean national anthem. So, according to the left media, it is good when Americans don't stand for the national anthem, but it is bad when Mike Pence doesn't stand for the North Korean national anthem. Now, you get that? The American national anthem, standing for the freest country in the history of the world, good when American citizens kneel for it, bad when Mike Pence doesn't stand for the anthem for a country that is oppressing millions of its own people, 20 million of its own people at current count. Okay, more headlines from the media. I mean, there are just tons of these. This is from Politico. Fred Warmbier criticizes North Korean Olympic spirit. How dare Fred Warmbier criticize the North Korean Olympic spirit? Oh, you mean just because his son was murdered by the North Koreans? Remember Otto Warmbier? He was the college student who traveled over to North Korea, idiotically, and then tried to supposedly steal a poster from a hotel room, and they literally beat him to death. I mean, they beat him so badly that by the time he was returned to his parents at home, he died in the hospital just days later. But how dare Fred Warmbier criticize the North Korean Olympic spirit? Just terrible. Just awful for him to do that. And that wasn't the full extent of the media treatment here. Okay, this one was from BuzzFeed. The only decent one was from BuzzFeed, which shows you how crazy things are, saying, don't be fooled by North Korea's Winter Olympics charm offensive. When BuzzFeed is when BuzzFeed is the voice of reason, you know something has gone intensely wrong with the moral fabric inside the American media. And it gets even worse.